Thank you very much indeed for having me here tonight. I'm going to say something about the wider context of our reform programme. I'm going to do it quite quickly because I think people probably mainly want to spend some time with the individual projects in crime, but I'll also be around at the end to take any questions. And before I start, I want to say something about the IT issues that have affected systems across the whole of the Ministry of Justice over the last week. And mainly what I want to say about it is that I'm sorry that it has happened and that I'm extremely grateful to everyone in the system who has worked so hard to keep things going despite the difficulties that there have been. I'm extremely happy to answer, well, extremely happy, maybe stretching a bit. I'm very happy to answer questions about that later as well, but I didn't want to just plough on in as though nothing was happening on that. So I'm just going to say a little bit. I don't think there's anyone in the room who needs me to sort of explain what the criminal justice system is, but the reason for the HMCTS reform programme is that we think that there are many things about the system as we currently run it that could be better, and particularly that we think we could make it much more straightforward to people, for people who come to justice to use our system. People come to the justice system, as I think you probably all know, at times of great moment. It's obviously true in the criminal system, but it's also true across civil, family and tribunals. There are very few people out there who come to the law lightly. There are a few of them, quite a lot of them write in green ink, quite a lot of them email me a lot, but we shouldn't actually be building the system around those people, and they're not the majority. And that means that we should be doing absolutely anything that we can to make it easier for people to understand what is happening, to make processes simpler, to make sure that we don't make simple things in the system more complicated, more obscure, more difficult to understand than they could be. And at the moment, our system is very paper heavy. We often use complicated routes for simple things. And I think HMCTS as a whole can often look indifferent to other people's time and trouble because of the old and complex nature of our processes. I'm also acutely conscious that we've had a long period where we have shaved and shaved and shaved the resource in our system without really fundamentally changing the way we do things. And I think that we're at the limit of what we can achieve in the system simply by asking the many extremely good people that I have in HMCTS just to keep doing a bit more with a bit less without really looking at where we could do things differently. But when I sit behind colleagues and watch what they're doing, particularly actually in the civil and family system, crime is actually, believe it or not, a little bit further ahead, there is still an enormous amount of careful, diligent effort that goes into manipulating paper files, copying things from the front of the file onto a rather old case management system and then potentially copying it again from the front of one bit of the case management system to another. And all of that is effort that is not really being directed at the things that are going to make the most difference to how people experience the system, that we know we can do better with modern systems and processes, and that also have the risk of introducing error. Every time we copy and paste something or retype something in, it's not just that that's work that potentially we don't have to be doing in that way, it's also that it adds error to the system. So the genesis of the reform programme is about trying to build the system more effectively around the users and making the system more efficient. And I often get challenged on whether that is real or whether this is just a big exercise in cost cutting. But I genuinely believe that there are things that we do at the moment that both cost us more than they need to and are worse for the users than they could be. And I am not interested in changing things that simply save us money if they don't also make things better for the person using the system. And I think there is plenty left in that middle bit of the Venn diagram that can both be better for the user and more efficient for us. And that's where I want to concentrate all of our effort and energy. I'm just going to talk a little bit about, so sorry, and I've failed to change my slide, but I won't stop any of these. We've got a set of principles that sit underneath the way we're working. I'm not going to read them out to you because although the slide is very small, I basically have a massive allergic reaction to reading slides. But the core, most important principle is about building the system in partnership with and around the needs of the people who use it. And I talk about this quite a lot, and I think there are some particular challenges in the justice system where there aren't that many people who sort of self-identify as a user of the justice system. Not like transport, where you have people who genuinely do, in some part of their brain, think of themselves as a commuter on a particular line and get very agitated about it when things change on that line and tell you very vocally what they think about it. A huge number of people only touch the justice system once in their lives. And so they may have a very strong view about that experience and they may communicate it, but quite often there is so much else going on that frankly that is nowhere near their priority. And so I think making the voice of the user in the system loud is something we actually have to work quite hard at. The other thing on this slide I sometimes have to explain is that we say on here, again you might not be able to read it, a system that is future-proof, designed for 2050 and not 2015. And I always feel the need to explain this is not because I think I have a crystal ball and can predict the world of 2050. What that means is we've got to design a system that contains within it the ability to make further change because we know that things are going to change. One of the things that makes it hard for us to continually improve as much as we could in HMCTS at the moment is that we've got some quite static systems. Some of our old IT systems are bought externally and frankly suppliers charge us a lot every time we change them. So quite often staff will come to me with really good ideas for small changes we can make and we have to basically say the cost of change is too high. And each individual change may not make very much difference, but the inability to continually make those shifts and improvements costs us a lot in terms of the opportunities that we've got to make things work better. And so we're building a system and we're building into the system the ability to keep improving it in response to people's feedback, to test things, to learn and to go back round again and again. I'm going to say something really briefly about some of the things we're doing across other jurisdictions. We have now introduced a system that allows you to make civil money claims online. We've received about 43,000 applications through the system since we put it out available to the public in the spring. And user satisfaction with it stands at about 90%. It works quickly and really importantly it helps people to think about and structure their claim. Not very sophisticatedly at the moment, so it asks people to fill in a bit of a timeline and a bit of a table of their claim, but we're already starting to hear that that is influencing what people are then bringing into court in those cases that go for a hearing. It also allows people to make offers and respond to them between each other to try to settle their case out of court through the system. So I don't know if anybody here has ever used eBay dispute resolution, but basically the principle is exactly the same. And if you can't settle in that way, then you go through the process. But it allows you to have a go at trying to settle. And for some people, that's given them a faster route to resolve their issue. In family, we have systems for doing probate and divorce online. And those sort of do what they say on the tin, really. I think the critical thing that that we've learnt from these is that we really can make a system that helps people get things right first time, and that's better for them and better for us. And the best example of this is in divorce. So the old paper form for divorce is about 40 pages long. It takes people about an hour to an hour and a half to fill in. It requires quite a lot of knowledge. So you actually, under some circumstances, have to know the difference between your domicile and your habitual residence to successfully fill in the divorce form. Quite a lot of people do not know the difference between their domicile and their habitual residence, not that surprisingly. And about 40% of those old paper forms were filled in wrong, including, I have to say, some by professional users. And so we would then send those forms back. So someone would fill it in, they'd send it off to us in the post, and then we open it and we go, oh, someone's filled this form in wrong, and then we put it in a thing with a little note on it saying you've got this bit wrong, and then we'd send it back to them. And our record keeping is not good enough for us to be able to tell how often, so some of those we will have sent back multiple times. When we started the new divorce system, we didn't just digitise the old form. We thought about how we could make sure that while retaining the legal integrity of the questions we were asking questions that people could answer and understand, give them guidance, and make sure that the system was flagging common errors. So, for example, it sounds daft, but if you put in a date for your divorce that was before your date of marriage, or if you say you want to use a reason that requires a certain amount of time to elapse and it hasn't, the system can tell you that there and then rather than you sending it off and getting it back. The error rate for the new system, the equivalent to that 40%, is 0.4%. So we're quite pleased with that. And that massively reduces the administrative burden for my staff in sending all of those forms back. So that is a reduction in cost to me, which is good. But really fundamentally, that is a reduction in cost that relates to a change that has improved the experience for the person using that system. And it's just one example of what I'm talking about when I talk about that Venn diagram intersection. Probate's quite good too. Public family law, we're starting a pilot which will allow information sharing between the family court and the local authority. That started in Swansea and is going well. In tribunals, we have started with social security, where we have a system that allows you to appeal against social security judgment online, to track your appeal online, to receive notifications by text message. Text is really important, particularly for more vulnerable user groups. Lots of people either don't have the ability to access email or have restrictions on data, but most people can get an unlimited amount of SMSs, and there are very few people now who don't have an SMS-enabled phone. So if you can give people the ability to track by text, you can reach a lot of people. And we're just starting some work that will allow some social security appeals to be resolved by what is called continuous online resolution, so a dialogue between the judge and the appellant, which doesn't require them to come to a hearing. And that we are starting to test at very, very small scale with a small number of social security appellants under the watchful eye of the president of the Social Security Chamber, who is very enthusiastic and believes that this will be something that increases access for people in that chamber. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, mainly you want to hear about crime, partly because we are trying to make sure we learn across the whole of the programme, and there will be some of those things that inform, and partly because one of the questions I'm constantly asked about this programme is, how can we have confidence that you will deliver it well? And so you will just have to forgive me that I will occasionally talk about bits of the programme that we're doing where we are starting to deliver things and prove that we can do it in a reasonable way, because it helps us to build confidence that we can do it right. I'm not going to talk in detail about the criminal aspects of the programme, because you're going to get that for the rest of the session, but both the system that allows for online plea and automated track case management, which is the single worst named project in the history of all projects, which is basically the thing that does the single justice service better than a spreadsheet, are going well. So we're taking very large numbers of cases through automated track case management, starting with Transport for London cases in Lavender Hill, and we've now started to do TV licensing cases, and that effectively allows us to bring in the evidence, automatically put it in front of a magistrate when they've made a decision to result, so that is, again, a better, swifter process. It's kind of a bit back officey, but it again reduces error, it reduces cost, it means we can do it more quickly and reliably. The really interesting thing about Make a Plea, so this is for low-level offences where in the past we would have invited people to plead by post. We still send out a letter that allows people to do it either by post or online, and offering the online option has started to increase the engagement rate. So it's still true that most people's response to being sent an invitation to plead online for such a case is to completely ignore it and hope it goes away. And clearly we want more people to engage and to respond, and we've seen that engagement rate go up as a result of giving people the option of doing it online, which again I think is really promising for the future. The other quite important thing to say about that is that principle that we haven't taken away the ability to do it by paper is quite important. Sometimes when we talk about doing more things online, people assume that we are at some point going to prevent people from doing things on paper. For me, this is much more about additional routes, new ways of doing things that you add. You don't take away the ability of someone to respond on paper if that's what they prefer to do. There is also a lot of work going on to change the way that we are organised. We are opening 2 new courts and tribunal service centres in Stoke and Birmingham on Monday, and they will allow us to operate in, again, it's for back office administration, so in some ways, if it works well, it will be completely invisible, but they will allow us to do things like answer the phone much more reliably and consistently, make sure that when someone rings us up we can find the case details properly and we can answer their question quickly, and do all of the back office processing that is associated with things like single justice cases much more effectively. I'm not going to talk about this in any enormous detail, but you may well want to ask me questions about it at the end. There are some other cross-cutting projects I know people will be interested in. We have work going on scheduling and listing. We are developing a dashboard for legal professionals. Probably won't be called that, but that's sort of what it is, which basically allows you to see all the cases that you've got going on and take action on them in one place, and also to track what's happening. So if you've sent something and you're expecting something to happen, to see what's going on. And we are also working on the evaluation of the programme. We are at the moment with the Ministry of Justice and with ministers working through the detail, but we will evaluate both the whole programme and we will have specific evaluation on parts of it. And we've also given a lot of attention to the massive improvement that we can make in the data that we can get out of newer systems that will help us to understand much more rapidly what's working, what's not working, where we can make improvements, which is something, again, that is hard for us to do at the moment in lots of bits of the system. We are trying to communicate better than I think we did right at the beginning of the programme. Again, I'm not going to read out the slide, and I'm conscious that it's quite small, but we're trying to do more of these events focused jurisdiction by jurisdiction. We also did a set of regional roadshows last year. We are mostly either live webcasting or recording and then putting out these events so that if people can't come in person, there's a time when you can look at them. You have on your seats a reform update that came out in the autumn, which gives an overview of everything that's happening in the reform programme. It also breaks it down by jurisdiction, so if there's any one bit you're interested in, you can just look at that, and that will be updated regularly and made available. And there's also details of how to stay in contact with us, tell us what you think, and get more information about the programme. Thank you very much for your patience with my generic overview. I'm now going to hand you over to the bit that you actually want to hear about, and Alex is going to talk to you about crime. Thank you very much.
All right, good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. My name's Alex Case. I'm the programme manager for part of the crime programme. So I lead the work on design. So there are a number of parts of the crime programme. There's a part on design, a part on digital delivery, so the actual building of the systems, the common platform system, which I don't lead, and there's a part on implementation and testing also as well. So I'm one of three working under an overall programme director. I just want to spend a minute or so just giving a brief overview of kind of where we are in the crime programme specifically. The programme's been running for a couple of years, as people will be aware, in terms of development of the common platform system itself. But notwithstanding that, we've just finished what we've called the discovery phase, which is essentially the high-level business design phase of the programme, where we have been focusing on reviewing and refreshing something that we call the crime service model. And the crime service model is essentially the vision for how the criminal courts will operate in the future. The original version of that was developed a couple of years ago. Things have moved on. Some things have moved on. Thinking's developed, so we've been refreshing that. And the way that we've been doing that is by consulting quite extensively. So we've spent the last probably 4 to 6 months going out and talking to the judiciary quite extensively, also talking to other users and stakeholders in the system and partners, so the CPS, police, legal aid. We've done a couple of sessions with the defence community as well, to make sure that people are aware of some of the proposals in that model and to make sure that those are valid proposals and that they are something that people in the system believe can work and should be implemented. Alongside that design phase or discovery phase, which I say is kind of the business focus piece, we have been, as a programme, developing the common platform system itself. So those two things have been running in parallel, and the technical design, the build, and some of the implementation of some of the early elements of common platform have been going on and continue to go on, and that's some of what you'll see in the breakout sessions in a moment where we're getting to on those. I just want to run through a few of the key features of the crime service model itself. So the model, it includes some of the things that Susan's spoken about. So the single justice service is part of that for the more minor cases. Improving case progression by using the common platform, so having a system that everybody can access and can share information across courts, police, CPS and defence. Having administrative activity centralised in the courts and tribunal service centres. And then finally, increasing the use of digital and video technology during the process of a case progressing through the system. So including some hearings, particularly interlocutory hearings, going into video or telephone where possible and where appropriate. What I will say though is that the use of video and other digital type channels where they're going to replace or be part of hearings will always be at the discretion of the judiciary. None of this is being mandated. The judiciary will always have the discretion to call people into their courtroom in person. And on that point, plea and trial preparation hearings in the Crown Court, the assumption is that almost all of those will continue in person, will not be moving to video, and trials will always be continuing in person as well, just to reassure any concerns that people might have around moving some of those things onto video. So that's just a very, very brief run through of some of the key elements of the service model.